Okay, so welcome everyone, and it's so nice to see. So now we've been doing a retreat for the last few days, and today is also a chance for some other people to come, which is nice, so we can kind of expand out a little bit. And the theme for tonight's talk is going to be on the Parayanavagga. Have any of you heard about the Parayanavagga? Yes, a few of you have. Okay, no? Okay. So I'll give you a little bit of background so you know what I'm talking about. And then I'm going to look at some of the kind of consequences of the Parayanavagga, why it is interesting, why it is important, why it matters, and how it brings out certain aspects of the Buddhist teachings. So the Parayanavagga, you may know that the Pali Canon is divided into 5 Nikayas. Yeah, you have the long suttas, the middle-length suttas, connected discourses, and numerical discourses. And then you have the Khuddaka Nikaya, which means the short collection. The short collection, as usual, is the longest one. That's kind of how things work in Buddhism. That's why it's called disorganized religion by some. So the shortest collection is the longest one, but that short collection contains some very interesting minor collections within it, which are often much loved in Buddhist circles. And we have things like the Udana, which is a very famous book there, Itivuttaka. We have the Dhammapada, probably most of you heard of the Dhammapada, that's in the Khuddaka Nikaya. And there's also a very interesting collection called the Sutta Nipata. And Sutta Nipata is like a bit of a collection of various things from various areas, but 2 of the 5 chapters of the Sutta Nipata are very ancient because they are actually referred to elsewhere in the Pali Canon. And those 2 chapters are called the Atthakavagga, the chapter of 8s, and the other one is the Parayanavagga, the chapter on going to the beyond. Going to the beyond. Doesn't that sound kind of cool? Yeah, going to the beyond. It's kind of a nice name for a chapter. Yeah, going to the beyond. It has this feeling of something extraordinary, something transcendent, something outside of the usual. And that is exactly what these verses are. They are something out of the usual, going to the beyond. Yeah, to the far side, crossing the flood of samsara, crossing the stream, and all of these kind of metaphors that you find in the suttas. So this already makes it interesting. Just the title makes this whole sequence of suttas interesting. And it contains 16 little suttas, and then it has a long introduction, and it also has a conclusion after the kind of the little 16 little suttas have been talked about. And so sometimes you find in other parts of the Pali Canon, you find that these suttas, individual verses within the suttas, are referred to. And so someone will ask the Buddha, what does this mean, this particular verse? And then the Buddha will give an explanation, because they're kind of profound. They're a bit cryptic, a bit kind of, you wonder what they mean. They don't have an immediate, obvious way to interpret some of these verses. They can be understood often in many different ways. And it's what makes them always exciting. It's exciting when something is a bit cryptic. Do you agree? Yeah, a little bit interesting. Yeah, because when things are cryptic, you have to interpret it a bit. You can use your judgment. Different people may come to different conclusion on the meaning. Yeah, there's this nice thing in the Vedas. The Vedas are the teachings prior to Buddhism in India, part of the Brahmanical tradition. And in the Vedas, they have this saying that the gods love hidden things. The gods love cryptic verses, or something like that is what it's saying. And because there's something attractive about that. You have to think about it, you have to reflect, you have to kind of come to a deeper understanding. And so this is one of the things about the Dhamma, and what makes these verses particularly interesting is the kind of the cryptic nature. So what you find in the suttas can be, the word of the Buddha can be divided into 2 things really. On the one hand, you have the prose, and the prose is just ordinary kind of language, and it's often very direct and very immediate. And the purpose of prose is to give you information about the Dhamma. This is what the Dhamma is like. Clear. Right speech is like this. Right action is like this. Very easy to understand, the idea of prose. So this is one aspect of the Dhamma. And then you have the verse side, which is supposed to be more cryptic, more inspirational. The idea is to inspire you. Often there will be a certain meter. A meter means a certain rhythm, to a verse. You find this also in English. I'm not sure about other languages, but probably most languages have this idea of rhythm to it, and so does the Pali language. And so when you read it in Pali, it has this nice flow to it. It flows beautifully. And that, of course, is often inspirational when it has these qualities. This is one thing that makes these verses interesting. But the other thing that makes them particularly interesting is that these people who the Buddha is speaking to are Brahmins. They come from the Brahmanical tradition. And so they kind of have a very different worldview from the Buddha. And then the Buddha comes around. He has just become enlightened quite recently. So he has a different way of thinking about things. And so you have this clash of two different worldviews, almost like a clash of civilizations. Two different things coming together. And so we see the contrast between the Brahmanical view of the world and compared to the Buddhist view of the world. So it's this kind of interchange between these Brahmins and the Buddha, and it's done in verse, which makes it kind of especially inspiring. And so this is what makes this interesting, and what makes it kind of profound. And so maybe I brought my computer because there I have the suttas. This is my excuse for having a computer. I have all the suttas there. So it's not because I like computers. No, it's just it's a good reason, right? You have to admit, if you have the suttas there, you got to admit it's a good reason. And then you have the internet, of course, you have the suttas and all these kind of things. And so these days it's very handy. Otherwise, you have to carry all these books around. Lots of books in the Pali tradition, depending on how many commentaries you count or how much Abhidhamma. It's a lot. So. These suttas, the Parayanavagga, it all begins according to, there's a bit of mythology here. All of this is not to be taken literally. The verses with the Buddha are probably the most authentic part of this, but some of the kind of introductory verses and ending verses are a bit more mythological in nature. So it begins with this Brahmin who lives in the south of India. The south of India is always a bit of a mystical place, far away from the Ganges plain where the Buddha was living most of the time. It's a kind of faraway area. And so in this faraway area, there's this Brahmin who lives, and he has his hermitage, and he is supported by one of the nearby villages. It's always been like that. If you are an ascetic or a Brahmin, you're supported by, like a village, by a certain group of lay people or whatever. And so he was supported by these, and after kind of doing a big sacrifice, I'll come back to the idea of sacrifice in a second. After that, he goes back to his hermitage. And now his idea, I'm just going to chill and relax and enjoy myself. And that's kind of the idea. That's what monastic life ideally is about. Chilling and relaxing. Ideally, except when you have to go to KL and it's not so chilling. No, I really enjoy coming to KL. I'm just messing around a little bit. But it's kind of intense, the program we have here. But it's a very nice program, so it's okay. So he goes back to his hermitage. And when he goes back to his hermitage, there is another Brahmin in his hermitage who's just come to visit. In ancient India, like large parts of the world, when visitors came, you would invite them to your house. Visitors are come or they're traveling around, they need a place to say, come in, we will feed you and look after you. A bit like the BGF is feeding and looking after me when I'm here. If you have never seen, if you want to see a real breakfast, come to the breakfast here at the VGF. It's an amazing breakfast. It's really, really, it's so nice. It's actually very touching when people really put in so much effort and so much kindness into something. It's a really positive feeling about that. It kind of brings out the whole community feels better as a consequence. So it's great. So anyway, so he kind of invites him in because he's a guest. But it turns out that this visitor is a bit dodgy. So this visitor, he says to this Brahmin, give me money. Well, you are a guest. You can't just ask for money like that. What are you talking about? Give me money. And then he said, well, I actually just spent all my money. I did this great sacrifice. I don't have any money here. I'm now retiring to this hermitage to chillax, not to kind of make money. I'm living on this village. This village is supporting me, and that's kind of the deal. I have no money. If you don't give me money, I'll put a curse on you. Don't have any money. In that case, if you don't give me money within 7 days, your head was split in 7 pieces. What? And so this Brahmin, his name was Bavari, was the name of this Brahmin, the one who was the good guy. The bad guy, I don't know the name of the bad guy, but the good guy, his name was Bavari. And he got really concerned. Some of these Brahmins were great meditators. Yeah, they would enter some of the deepest states of meditation, even from a Buddhist perspective, attain some of the highest meditation states available to the human mind. But when he got that curse, because in India, curses were taken very seriously. What is it like in Malaysia? They're taken seriously? Are you afraid of curses? Black magic, this kind of stuff? But in India, it was taken very, very seriously. And so if you thought someone was putting a curse on you and your head would split in 7 pieces in 7 days' time, notice this number 7, right? 7 pieces in 7 days. 7 is like a mythological number. It's a powerful, magical number, right? So if you hear the word 7, it makes it even more powerful. All of these things have these hidden meanings. The gods love hidden things, right? So you have these hidden meanings. And so he was afraid, right? This was kind of concerning. You take these things seriously. So even though he was a great meditator, he still was really concerned about this. And so he started to get thin. He was losing weight. He didn't sleep well at night. His meditation got even worse. And eventually, there was a deity who saw what was happening to him. Maybe a deity who had been attracted by his virtue, by his deep meditation. Yeah, the deities are often attracted by these things. And it is said that if you are a very virtuous person, especially if you develop the Brahma Viharas, the metta, the loving kindness to a very profound level, the deities will look after you. Why? So, well, like the why is interesting, so that the army in heaven can become larger. Yeah, so what they do is that they look at people who have a potential for being reborn in the heavenly realm, and then they look after you, so that when you die, you kind of join them in the heavenly realm to fight the bad guys. Yeah, that's kind of that's the story. It's an interesting story, but I think they often look after you simply because you are virtuous. Yeah, they like virtue. They enjoy that. And so this deity goes to Bavari, and she says to him, well, you're looking in a bad shape. Yeah, what's going on? Well, this kind of bad Brahmin has told me that my head was split in 7 pieces in 7 days. And this deity says, this Brahmin is a charlatan. He doesn't know anything about head splitting. He doesn't know anything about that kind of stuff. However, there is a person who knows everything about head splitting. He said, really? Okay, who is this person that knows everything about head splitting? I'd like to know. I want to find an answer to this problem. Is this exciting? Yeah, it's an exciting story, right? This is kind of, wow, this is in the Suttas. Who would have known that these kind of stories were in the Suttas unless I came all the way to KL to tell you about it? So he says, well, who is this person? Yeah, who is kind of, knows everything about head splitting? And of course, the answer is the Buddha. Yeah, the Buddha knows everything about head splitting. And when he hears the Buddha, he's like, what? Did you say Buddha? Now, this is not there, but it's almost like, I said Buddha. Did you really say Buddha? I said Buddha. Did you really say Buddha? I said Buddha. This is what we find elsewhere in the suttas. When people hear the word Buddha, they ask 3 times to make absolutely sure that you really meant the Buddha. And Bavari is really excited. Yeah, the word Buddha is a very rare word to hear in the world. In the Indian languages, the Buddha means the awakened one. So when they hear the word Buddha, what they hear is like the awakened one. And they get really excited and really interested. And so after being convinced by this deity that there is a Buddha in the world, this Bavari, he had 16 students. And all of these students were really, really good meditators and all highly attended. Each one of them had their own group of students again. So it was like generation. You can imagine this kind of generational hierarchy, this sequence of famous Brahmins all practicing Dhamma really well. And so Bavari, who is now really, really old, he's said to be 120 years old, he says, it's impossible for me to travel all the way to the Buddha. The Buddha lives in the Ganges Valley in Savatthi, in the north, way north of the Ganges River. I live way down in south. It's like 1,000 kilometers or something to travel. So all of you students, please go and visit the Buddha and find out if he is the real thing, and ask him one important question. What is the meaning of head splitting? You can see why he's a bit concerned about that, right? His own head is going to split, so what actually is going on here? And so they go, all of these Brahmins, they go to find the Buddha. And then eventually, of course, they get to the Buddha, and they ask about head splitting. They ask about many other things as well, but they ask about head splitting. So what is the answer to the question about head splitting? Do you know? Can you guess what is the meaning of head splitting? What is the Buddhist answer to head splitting? I'm not going to tell you. Maybe I will tell you later on. Maybe not. We will find out at the end of the talk. If I haven't told you, you have to come back next year. This is kind of the deal. So they go all the way. So before I tell you kind of the answer to head splitting, if I forget any word, you can ask me at the very end so I don't forget about the head splitting, because that's kind of, now that's kind of getting really exciting. But I want to talk a little bit about, then there is this conversation between these Brahmins and the Buddha. I'm going to talk a little bit about the content of that conversation, because it's very profound and very beautiful in many ways. But the first thing I want to point out is that these were Brahmin students. They were not Buddhists. They came from a different religion. And they go to the Buddha to find answers to things. And that's kind of amazing. It's kind of this beautiful cross-religious fertilization between different religions, where one religion goes to another one, where they're not afraid of listening to each other and learning from each other. There's something really delightful about that. And it shows the kind of open-mindedness of that beautiful Indian culture at that time. It was a very vibrant religious and spiritual culture. People were seeking for truth. They were not seeking for dogmas. They were not seeking for things that they could just hold on to as the truth, because this is my religion. They were seeking for actual truth. They wanted to meditate. They wanted to attain insight. They wanted to find the end of suffering. Some of them had an idea of the samsaric existence, and they wanted to find an end to samsaric existence, because they understood it is really problematic. And so they all go together to the Buddha to resolve this issue. And there's something for us, I think, in our modern society to learn from this. In our modern society, we're often not open enough. You see the various religions, we always argue about each other. No one really seems interested in listening to anyone else. All they want to do is convince the other people. They don't want to listen. And that's kind of a lost opportunity. If we listen, we can often learn more. If we listen, we can learn more about sometimes our own religion. Maybe our views will even change a little bit. And as Buddhists, that's also true, even though obviously Buddhists, all religion kind of believe that your religion or your spiritual teaching is the best. Otherwise, you wouldn't have that spiritual teaching. It's as simple as that. So obviously you do. But sometimes we can also learn. Sometimes there are things maybe that may not be quite right in the way we think about things. People like the Dalai Lama always says that if something is a scientific truth, well, then that is the truth. End of story. We're looking for truth after all. We're not looking for just holding on to things. And so if we are serious about truth, we have to have open minds. And that means we can discuss with others in a much more harmonious way, listen better. And when we listen better, there's also a more chance that our argument will be listened to more by the other side. Because if we listen, then they will listen more. This is kind of how things tend to be. And so this is, I think, an important point, even though we tend to believe obviously in the awakening of the Buddha, maybe not everything that we do 2,500 years later actually matches with how the Buddha taught things. Maybe we have lost something on the way, and so we also can benefit from openness in a sense. This is kind of the first thing, is that beautiful religious plurality where people are real seekers of truth. Spiritual path is not just something to be held on to. Sure, probably at that time as well, people held on to it because people need crutches. That's just the nature of human beings, and we all need things to hold on to. And if we don't hold on to that, we're going to hold on to something else. That's just the nature of the human mind. But still, the idea of searching is such a beautiful idea. And so they go to the Buddha, and one of the kind of interesting things that you kind of start to see when they start discussing with the Buddha is the kind of vast difference. There's a kind of a gulf of difference between the Brahmanical religion on the one hand and the Buddhist religion on the other hand. Yeah, you see in the number of areas like prayer, for example, sacrifice, the larger understanding of the world, especially the understanding of a creator God, and a soul. Some of the most fundamental ideas about the world, were very different in Buddhism compared to Brahmanism, the prior religion. And when you have such a fundamental shift in things, from one to another one, that is actually very rare in human history. Human history usually changes in kind of increments. It goes slowly. It's very rare that you have these radical changes like that. And the only way you can really have a radical change if there is some kind of radical discovery. This is how you have change in science. There's a radical discovery and science changes. But that's still small beer compared to what we're seeing here. Here the whole society, the way of thinking changes. And so what that, I think, what that indicates is that the Buddha did really have a very radical vision of the world that was entirely different from what was before. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to have this radical shift in society where suddenly all ideas were turned upside down and they became completely different from what they were before. Suddenly, all of these things changed. And some of these things are very profound and some of them are more ordinary. There was a vast change. I want to talk about some of those changes, how the Dhamma compared to the previous ideas of Vedism in ancient India. And so one of these changes, and this is something that I think even today we sometimes need to reflect at in the Buddhist world, one of the big changes was that prior to Buddhism, there was a lot of prayer going on. Because they believed in the gods, a variety of gods. They believed in Brahma and a variety of other things. And so prayer was a very important part of that society. But then the Buddha comes along and says, forget about all those praying. It doesn't do any good. Who are you going to pray to? Is there anyone who's going to listen to those prayers? In fact, these prayers are dangerous. Because one of the things you find in these suttas here is that prayer is a bit like craving. It's a bit like desire. When you pray to a God, there's usually some need there that you're trying to fulfill through that prayer. It depends a bit on what kind of prayer you're doing. The kind of the usual prayer has to do with some kind of asking for support or help, or please look after me because I'm a sinner or whatever. Kind of this is a Christian way of thinking about things. But there's some need there, some craving that you're looking for. And because it is part of this bigger idea of craving, it means that instead of liberating you, instead of helping you to overcome samsaric existence, prayers become something that actually sticks you to existence instead. It becomes part of the problem. So from a Buddhist point of view, you say, forget about all those prayers. This is what these Brahmin students ask about. They ask about prayers and things. No, forget about prayer. Prayer doesn't work. In fact, it does the opposite. Again, depending a bit on what we mean by prayer, but how it is often practiced, it actually has the opposite effect, and it actually prolongs problems and suffering rather than resolving them. So that's kind of interesting. So Buddhism is not about prayer, and we need to remember that. I know far too many Buddhists who pray. They pray to Kuan Yin, they pray to the Buddha, they pray to I don't know what, they pray a lot. And sometimes they ask for crazy things. Please give me a nice car. I need a nice car, or whatever. That's kind of really silly. Or they pray to Hindu gods. Very common. You go to Buddhist temples, right? And in the Buddhist temple, you have the Buddha in one corner. You have all the Hindu gods over there. And so you bow down to the Buddha. Okay, the Buddha is number one. And afterwards, you go to the Hindu gods and you pray for kind of worldly goods afterwards. So you cover your spiritual side, and then you cover your worldly side. This is kind of the idea, yeah. And you can go to these temples, especially in places like Sri Lanka, and you will see that. And you see it in Thailand as well, by the way. Thailand is quite common to pray to Brahma and these kind of things. So the Buddha says, no, it's not a good idea, and still we do it. And the reason we do it is because we haven't really read the suttas. We haven't read what the Buddha has to say about these things. And so this is kind of one of the important things, is to find out what did the Buddha really say here. So this is one example. Another example that is even more important is that, of course, these were Brahmins that did sacrifices, very common at that time. And there was various kind of sacrifices, but some of the really bad ones were the sacrificing of animals. And this was very common. It happens even today in the Buddhist, in the Hindu world. You can go and you find places where they sacrifice animals, often large numbers, large quantities. And of course, it creates enormous amounts of suffering. For those animals, it creates suffering for all the people that are involved, because it's very painful to tie down those animals, and they know probably that they're going to be sacrificed in some way. An animal has kind of also some instincts about these things. There's a kind of a terrible situation. The people who lead them are suffering, the animals are suffering, everyone is really suffering. And of course, the worst part, you're not making any good merit. It doesn't really work. It doesn't get you anywhere. You sacrifice all these animals and all you do is bad merit. It has bad results. You think this has good results, but actually has bad results. So it's kind of based on wrong view, on a misunderstanding of reality. So it's terrible. So the Buddha says, no more animal sacrifice. However, is there some other kind of sacrifice? So again, with the Buddha, very often it takes some of the pre-existing ideas that existed in India before, and it turns them around, gives them a new meaning. And in Buddhism, sacrifice instead becomes the idea of generosity. And generosity is a very important part of the Buddhist practice. I've been talking about this during the retreat we had, and there's so many beautiful suttas about generosity, how to be generous, how to think about it, where to give. All of these kind of things are really beautiful and powerful aspects of the teachings of the Buddha. So sacrifice becomes generosity. So you too can take part in sacrifices, by sacrificing little things and kind of supporting a good cause in whatever way you want to do. And please do that. This is actually incredibly important. Generosity is a foundational aspect of the Buddhist path, and many of you will know that already. But practice this in a good way, in a positive way. And when you do it in a positive way, in a good way, supporting worthy causes, often, doesn't have to be a lot, but often. So you learn the idea of generosity and you build it into your practice. It becomes very important and very powerful. And if you ever do meditate later on, what you will find is that will support the meditation. And you will feel a sense of happiness and joy in your meditation because you have lived well. You have sacrificed in a positive way. So please remember that. Don't go for the Brahmanical sacrifice, That's a bad idea. Go for the Buddhist kind of sacrifice. Be a generous person. So the Buddha reinvents these terms. He gives them new meaning. Another thing that the Buddha says and gives new meaning is the idea of the castes society. In India, you had these 4 castes, the Brahmins, the Kshatriyas, the Vaishyas and the Sudras, the 4 castes, and they had very different positions in that society. And then you had some outcasts as well. That's a kind of terrible thing to be an outcast in ancient India. So you had all of these castes, and people's value was determined by the caste, by this hierarchy. And if you were a Brahmin, you were high value, and if you were an outcast, you were like nothing. You were like an animal almost. And then the Buddha comes along and says, that is not how you judge people. You don't judge them by their caste. People are judged by their virtue, by their conduct, by how they live their life. And so basically he is saying, and this is kind of how it is within the Sangha, within the monastic Sangha, there is no caste hierarchy. There is more like a seniority hierarchy, but no caste hierarchy. Yeah, people are judged mostly in the Sangha by their virtue, by their conduct, by how they live their life. And that's another way. And it's basically overturning all the fundamental ideas upon which that Brahmanical society is based. Yeah, the word Brahmin gets an entirely new meaning. The word Brahmin becomes a word for kind of the arahant, yeah, the enlightened person. They are called Brahmins. You're not Brahmin by birth. You're a Brahmin by conduct, or by insight, or by meditation. That's how you are a Brahmin. So these are some of those changes. But the most important changes, and are actually even more fundamental than that. And there are two things in particular that are really interesting that come out of these verses. And one is the problem, the main problem that these Brahmins are facing in finding a way out of samsara. They're finding a way out of suffering and finding the highest happiness. There's one thing in particular that is blocking them from accessing that. They have almost all the requisites that are required. They have the deep samadhi, the very deep meditation practice, which means that they are basically at the end of the Buddhist path, because samma samadhi, the deep samadhi, is basically a similar kind of samadhi that they have. And yet they can't make it. They haven't really got samma samadhi. It's not really right stillness or right samadhi they have. There's something missing. And that one thing that is missing is right view. You have wrong view. And so you come to that samadhi and you misunderstand what it actually means. Instead of using it as an equipment of the mind that can help you to achieve insight, you take it to mean more like a reality, an eternal reality that you can always attain and always achieve. So the misunderstanding, the wrong view, is what blocks these Brahmins from accessing that. And so right view is so incredibly important in Buddhism. This is the one thing that, from a Buddhist point of view, from our point of view, distinguishes Buddhism from all other spiritual paths. It is how we relate to reality and how we relate to the world. This is the one thing. And often this is not communicated enough. That right view is so important. And it needs to be communicated more. And we need to bring it more into our practice. And the question is, how can we bring it more into our practice to make it more powerful, more useful, so that our path of practice really takes off in a more powerful way? That is kind of the critical thing. And part of that, of course, is to listen to the Buddha, listen to the word of the Buddha, to try to understand what he is talking about. And a lot of the teachings, I'm actually going to Sri Lanka very soon, because I usually go to Sri Lanka every couple of years, and over there give a large retreat for lots of monastics and things, and it's really kind of I love going to Sri Lanka. I love going to KL. I love going to Sri Lanka. Everywhere you go as a Buddhist monk, you kind of love going, because people are usually very kind and compassionate and very nice to you. But I love going to Sri Lanka, and I asked them, what kind of retreat should we do? And they said, right view retreat. So the whole retreat is going to be on right view, all the way through. So it's going to be, I don't know how many hours of talks on right view, 20 hours or something like that, or just on right view. And this is why, because it is so important. It creates the foundation of the path. So right view. So what exactly are we supposed to do? And many of you will already have a lot of right view. You have been around Buddhism for a long time. You have an idea of the basic concepts in Buddhism, how the Noble Eightfold Path works, how the Buddha teaches impermanence, non-self, and suffering. These are kind of the foundational aspects of right view, how to contemplate your existence according to these things. So you already have a lot of right view. And sure, consolidate it. Go to good Dhamma talks. Listen to the word of the Buddha. Good Dhamma talks. By that I mean Dhamma talks that are in accordance with the suttas. Make sure you choose some wise teachers. Maybe you shouldn't be here. I was just thinking, occurring to me. No, one of the things I try to do is to speak according to the suttas, because I always found the suttas very inspiring. But make sure that you choose teachers well. This is important. It should be in accordance with the suttas when you listen to a teacher. So build up right view in that way, by listening to the Buddha, reading the suttas, listening to the good teachers. But very often, the most important thing is not more right view, because very often you already have enough right view. What is more important is how to integrate that right view into your practice. Because, okay, you know a lot, but it should not, Buddhism is not an intellectual path. Buddhism is not the path about knowing a vast number of things. It can be very helpful to know a lot of things, but that is not the ultimate goal. The purpose is to practice and to gain some results from that practice, gain some freedom, gain some happiness, reduce your suffering in life, feeling that you are developing your mind. It's like you're lifting yourself up by the bootstraps, as the old saying goes. Yeah, that's impossible, but that's kind of what we're doing in Buddhism. Yeah, lifting ourselves up, lightening the burden of life, feeling lighter, feeling happier, and all of these kind of beautiful things. That is the purpose. And to do that, you need to embed that right view into your practice. You need to make sure that you access that right view in your life, all the time, so that you can do the right thing, that which actually makes the path work. So how can we do that? And you have to admit it's quite hard. Many of you are going to be very busy. You probably, I don't know what you do. You work, have some kind of stressful job. Some of you probably have families, and you kind of have a family and a job, and then you run a Buddhist center on top of that. I'm not looking at you anywhere, but anyway, you have so many things going on, in your life, and the Dhamma often fades into the background because the worldly demands are so great. Is that true? Yeah, I can see some of you are nodding. So are you nodding just because you think it's nice to nod, or do you agree with what I'm saying? But I think it is true, and I see this all the time. Even as a monastic, sometimes you get too busy, and the Dhamma, can sometimes fade into the background, which is terrible for a monastic. That should always be at the forefront of your mind. So how can we bring it into our daily life? And one of the most important things is to actually slow down a little bit. Don't go so fast. Don't use so much social media. Don't do so many things that keeps the mind preoccupied all the time. Because if you are too busy, if you have too many things to do, and if your mind is too occupied, you are just living off the habits of the past. The habits of the past take over your mind because you're just running on that thing which is already inside of you. On and on and on, going really fast. The past is basically holding you in the present and trapping you in the present and repeating the patterns that go back. You don't know how far back they go. And so that is the problem with not stopping. We're just going, allowing your automatic reactions to come out, reacting to the world, as I've been saying recently, rather than responding to the world. Reacting to the world means it's automatic. Responding to the world means that we have a bit more reflective response to what is happening around us. We think more, we're more careful, we're not careless about how we deal with the world. And that is kind of the idea. So you can see the difference here. If you just following the habits from the past, then you're not going to go anywhere. You're just going to recreate the past over and over and over again. You're never going to be able to change your direction. However, if you slow down a little bit, it allows the Dhamma to enter the picture. You have the past coming to you right here in the present. Right here in the present, so much of what we experience is the past arising in the present. But there's also more to it. There's also the input that comes in the present. And one of the inputs that we should put into the present is the Dhamma. And then we're no longer trapped by the past. We're no longer trapped by those habits, and we can respond differently from what we otherwise would. So when we stop, it has a potential for the Dhamma to arise within us. We have a potential for seeing things differently. So you wait, especially when there are important moral questions or decisions that you have to make, choices you have to make. And sometimes there are moral questions, How should I speak to this person? How should I act in this situation? What is the morally correct thing to do? Now I can feel my temper is getting a bit frayed. What is going wrong? Maybe I have to be careful now. You can feel sometimes that you are moving slightly towards immorality, maybe, or not being as virtuous as you would like to be. Those are the times to slow down. Those are the times to wait for the Dhamma to arise within you. No longer allow yourself just to be pushed by the past, trapped by the past, or, if you like, trapped by the ego, because very often the ego also wants to express itself. The ego says, do this, do that, and very often the ego is fueled by defilements. In one way, the ego is a kind of big defilement, right? It's kind of a delusion, and so it is a big defilement in its own right. But then it is also fueled by other defilements, like ill will and desires and these kind of things. And you want to allow those to die down, and you want to allow the Dhamma to be your leader instead of these other things. And there is a beautiful discourse in the Anguttara Threes that talk about this. How some people are led, self-led, atta-led. And that can be understood in this case to be more kind of the ego. You're trying, the self is leading you. Some people are led by others, which also can be scary depending on who they are. And some are led by Dhamma. So you should all try, if you are serious about Buddhist practice, to be led by Dhamma instead of these other things. Allowing the Dhamma, the space to arise within you. And if you have questions of morality in your life, that you're unsure what to do, or you can feel that you are a bit on the wrong track, you can feel your mind having too many defilements, you are about to make a bad decision, stop. Ask yourself, what is the Dhamma answer in this case? What would the Buddha have done in this case? And if you don't know, then wait, procrastinate. Wait as long as you possibly can. I've just been teaching recently that it's good to be a procrastinator. Is that what you learn in Malaysia as well? When you go to school, they tell you procrastinate. Wait, don't act until you have to. But it's actually a beautiful thing not to act before you have to, because very often, why act beforehand? Might as well wait. And if that leads to more clarity of the mind, great. So I say procrastinate. Of course, if you have to do something, you have to do it. But if you don't have to, chillax, wait. And then when the time ripens and the Dhamma kind of becomes clear, well, then you can act. So it's about creating space for the Dhamma, not to allow the past just to repeat itself. And to do that, often you need to wait more, you need to relax more, you need to be patient, in the word, more patience, so that these qualities can arise. What would Ajahn Brahm do? Ajahn Brahm is one of my heroes. What would Ajahn Brahm do? I think, he would do this. Wow, okay, maybe I should follow Ajahn Brahm's example, rather than thinking that I know what is the wisest thing to do. This is the thing for you. This is what we need to do to allow the Dhamma in our lives. And then you carry on with understanding the suttas. As you go deeper, you allow more Dhamma to come into your life. And then gradually, in this way, you kind of go in the right direction. And also, very sometimes in life you need to be inspired a little bit. You need to lift yourself up because you lose your sense of direction. If that is the case, you come to a nice Dhamma talk. They're all accessible now on the internet. You listen to a good Dhamma talk, you get inspired. You listen to a sutta reading, someone who does that really well. You inspire yourself again while getting right view together. It's great, this inspiration and right view coming together, and you go back and then you kind of carry on in your life in this way. And then gradually, slowly, you find yourself becoming this far more beautiful person with a beautiful mind. The good qualities growing, the bad qualities declining. That is how you know you are on the right path. So right view, an incredibly important part of the practice, and it should inform everything we do, ideally. And so when these Brahmins come to the Buddha, they already have this incredibly deep meditation. They have attained something known as the sphere of nothingness, which is one of the immaterial attainments on the Buddhist path. So they have gone a long way, but still they can't make an end of things. And what they're missing is the spark of right view. But those two things together, they are the critical components for insight. They are the critical things that you need to make an end of this samsaric existence. When you have right view and the deep samadhi, that is actually what you need. Two things coming together. So what we can learn from these Brahmins is the deep samadhi. In fact, in India at the time, that deep samadhi was already available. And then from the Buddha, we get the right view. And then that is the Noble Eightfold Path in a nutshell. The first factor of the Noble Eightfold Path is right view. The last one is right samadhi, right stillness. All the other factors in between are there to support that samadhi. So they are kind of included in the samadhi, and then there's right view at the beginning. Those two together summarizes the entire path of Buddhism, the whole kind of Visuddhimagga. And that is what we see in this verse. This is what we learn from this Brahmin, the power of these two factors coming together. So these are some of the things to learn from the Parayanavagga, the way to the beyond. But I wanted to also, I brought my computer for a reason, not just to show it off, but actually for a reason. Actually, I'm a bit embarrassed about having a computer, to be honest. I shouldn't, showing off, it might be the wrong word, but I wanted to read you one verse. In the first sutta, it is to the questions of Ajita. Ajita was one of the 16 Brahmin students. And to give you a feeling for what these verses are like. And then the answer the Buddha gives. So, you want to hear this? Okay, good. I'm glad. Okay, good. Otherwise, if you had shaken your heads, I would have been very disappointed. So thank you for agreeing. So, so this is the verse of this young Brahmin student. Actually, not that young. They're probably getting old already. And he asked the Buddha. His name is Ajita. Ajita means the unconquered one. And this is what he says to the Buddha. He says, by what is the world obstructed? Because of what does it not shine? By what is it stuck? What is its greatest fear? And so it's in verse, right? You can feel the kind of versification there. And the translation kind of reflects the verse a little bit. By what is the world obstructed is the first question. What do you reckon? What do you think the Buddha is going to say? Are you able to know what the Buddha is going to answer to that one? Some of you probably know already, but the answer is ignorance. Ignorance is the biggest obstruction in the world. The nivutta is the Pali word for obstruction. And it's often said in the suttas that the world is hindered or obstructed by ignorance and fettered by craving. This beautiful phrase, hindered by ignorance, or delusion if you like, fettered by craving. Avidya, the ignorance here, or the delusion here, is like the thing that blinds you. It obstructs you. You cannot see what is really going on. You're walking around, hitting your head in the ceiling all the time, stubbing your toes against the, wow, you see this little ledge here? That's where I almost stubbed. I could have stubbed my toes before. I didn't, actually, because I know I've been there before, so I knew it was there. But you could, in theory, if it was dark in this room, bang, you walk into this thing here. Darkness hurts, because in darkness you can't see. Whether it is real darkness in the world or the spiritual darkness, either way, you will suffer if you have wrong view. You don't understand what is going on. Ignorance, delusion is always a problem. You want to be as wise and as kind of enlightened as possible. It hinders you. And craving is the thing which ties you to the world, right? Obstructed by ignorance, tied or fettered by craving, is the saying. This is one of those very beautiful things, and we could go on a long time about that because it's very profound and beautiful, but I will leave it at that because the point is just to give you a flavor here. So because of what does the world not shine? Interesting. Is that interesting? Why does the world not shine? Why do you not shine? You are the world. Everyone is the word. When the Buddha used the word world, he means people, right? Why do people not shine? Many possible answers, right? There could be many possible answers to that. There are many things that make the mind kind of murky and dark and dirty. But here the answer is greed and negligence make it not shine. So why is that? What is going on there? And the answer is that when you are greedy, when you're tied to the worldly things and worldly phenomena, your mind is kind of small. Yeah, you're creating me and mine over here, and then there's the big dangerous world outside. Yeah, I noticed when I've been walking around the neighborhood here, people seem very afraid. There's barbed wire everywhere. Can I see this barbed wire on top of the wall? I think, wow, people are really afraid. Maybe there are many bad people here. I don't know. But I kind of get this feeling people are afraid of something. And part of that is because of greed. This is my property. Yeah, I shouldn't tell you this, but there's this Tropicana kind of golf course up here. You know about that one? And so I saw this wall, and it was barbed wire, and I thought there was kind of these gates to drive in. And so I thought, I don't like this kind of, I'd like to go in there, but probably no one will let me in. So I kind of walked around and see if there was any kind of smart ways to get in. Then I saw a door on the side. And there was these guards. They would come out of this door, and they would kind of urinate on the outside, and they would go back in again. And so I thought, well, if the guards can go out, surely I can go in, right? And the door didn't have any sign. It didn't say no trespass, or that didn't say anything like that. So I thought, well, if I go in, no one can say anything because there's no sign. So what can they say? I just followed the door. And so I went in. So I went into the Tropicana golf course, walking around saying good morning to everyone and having a good time. And then I walked out the main gate saying hello to the guards on the way out. That's what I did. Yeah, because all of this kind of, I feel it's, but I don't like this idea when kind of people block things off, and kind of you can't walk places, and this is my place. I don't know. I think it's my background which does that to me, kind of maybe a little bit rebellious or whatever. And the worst thing that could have happened, ending up in prison. That's the worst thing. Yeah, so that's okay. Can deal with that maybe. But so greed makes the mind small like that. Greed makes this is mine. Keep your hands off. It makes you afraid of the world outside. And that mind that is afraid and greedy and small and constrained is a painful mind. It is not a mind that is large, that is generous and wants to share with the world. And that's why it doesn't shine, because it's small and constrained. Whereas the large mind that incorporates everyone and says, be my friend. Yeah, doesn't matter what religion you are, here I want to support you and be kind to you. It's a large mind that shines and is bright and brilliant. Greed makes us lesser human beings. If you want to have large hearts and be large human beings, we should be more generous and kind to the whole world. Take away that barbed wire. Or whatever. I don't know. People have to do what they want. Negligence. Yeah, negligence is another one that is really problematic. This is pamada in Pali. Pamada means that you're not careful. You're not living with a mind that you're always circumspect, looking for the right way of doing things. You are negligent. And if you are negligent, you have a mind that is dirty, a mind full of defilements, because you're not careful with stopping the anger and actually doing the right thing. So a negligent mind, negligence and greed make you into a smaller, dirtier human being. Yes? It's nice, isn't it? These verses bring out something very beautiful. You could have answered this in many ways, but this is how the Buddha decides to answer. Let's have a quick look at the time over there. Okay, I think we still have a couple of minutes left of the hour. Is it 1 hour, Bobby? No, I started a few minutes after 8:30. I started 8:35. I think I got 2 more minutes. Yeah. Thank you. That's very kind of you. So, by what is it stuck? Yeah. The answer by the Buddha is the world is stuck by wishful prayer. This is my translation. Again, the idea of craving. He brings in the idea of prayer. This Pali word means both wishing and prayer at the same time. And so we are stuck by craving, stuck by all this wishing. Yeah, this is what ties us to the world. Desire makes the world go round. Desire drives us on into the future. Yeah, desire is one of those big problems in the world. So this is what the Buddha said. That's why we have to end desire and craving for awakening. And the last one, what is the world's greatest fear? Yeah, and the answer, again, probably could come up with many different answers, but the Buddha replies, suffering is the world's greatest fear. And that, of course, is one of the reasons why the Buddha starts out the Four Noble Truths. The first one is the noble truth of suffering, dukkha satcha. Why? Because he knows this is the driving force in all of us as human beings. Everything we do is meant to get us out of suffering and move towards more happiness. If you look at your day and you look at your life, you look at your choices, everything is geared towards that. Why are you Buddhists? Or maybe you're not Buddhist, I don't know what you are, but assuming you are Buddhists, yeah? Why are you Buddhists? Well, because you think it's going to be a positive thing in your life, right? That's why you're here. Why do you choose one thing over another? It is always because it is some drive towards more happiness, a drive away from problems, suffering, pain, and all the problems in the world. This is the main thing in human life that motivates almost everything that we do. So that is what the Buddha is saying. So that is a very brief overview of the Parayanavagga. And we did a whole retreat in Perth recently on the whole Parayanavagga, going through all the various suttas. That was very nice, very good fun, to be honest with you. But one of the kind of really important lessons from all of this, and one thing I haven't really mentioned yet, all of the things I talked about are really important. The main thing may be right view, how incredible critical it is. But another thing is how these people from another religion, the Brahmins, they come to the Dhamma, they understand the teaching of the Buddha, and how they then learn from that teaching. And how we as Buddhists should also be open to people from other religions, and not think that they are terrible or bad or whatever. Some of them are going to be really good people. Some of them will have really great spiritual potential. Sometimes they have more spiritual potential than many of the Buddhists that we see. Yeah, some of those Buddhists haven't got much spiritual potential. You know what I mean? Yeah, they have kind of Buddhist. They have Buddhist for all kinds of reasons. And that's okay. People can be Buddhist. There's nothing wrong with that. But there may not be that great spiritual potential. Whereas other people from other religions and backgrounds may actually have a lot of that because they have so many good qualities already. All they need is the spark of right view, and off they go, and they understand what we are talking about in a very deep way. So we should always respect each other. Always respect people of other religions. Sometimes I can be a bit hard in the way I talk about people of other religions, and I should really stop doing that because sometimes they are really to be respected in a very high way. And so this is also one of the lessons from the Parayanavagga. So keep on developing right view in your life. Keep on bringing it into the practice. Allow that to guide you in your life. Always right view. Ask yourself, what would the Buddha have done? And then you're going to be on the right path. Okay, that's it for the talk tonight. Okay, so you are now very welcome to ask questions and make comments as you would like. So please fire away, as they say. What? You see, I knew I was going to forget. That's kind of why So head splitting. So the first question is, what did the Buddha answer? What is the head splitting? What is the head and what is the head splitting? Okay, easy. You probably know already by now because I kind of given it away during the last verse of the talk. The head is ignorance. Head splitting is the splitting of ignorance. They're splitting it off, kind of breaking it up. That's the head and head splitting in Buddhism. Anyway, so there you are. Thank you so much, Nibran, for reminding us of that.
Wandami Ajahn, I have a question.
Where are you?
I'm here.
There you are. Okay. Right in front of me. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Please, go for it.
So my question will be about prayers. Because you mentioned that, the Buddha mentioned that prayers can be a form of craving. Then how do you differentiate prayers and determination? Because it seems very similar. Like, let's say I say, may the power of triple gem, I'm able to overcome any obstacle. What is the difference from that and normal prayers? And also, maybe can you elaborate a bit why prayer is a bad thing? Because for some people, when they pray, they get a very much sense of psychological benefit, immediate psychological benefit, and it can turn into, let's say, to be better in their spiritual path by doing prayers first. So, may I know your explanation?
Yeah, no, thank you. It's a very good question, actually, and I appreciate that. And I think you're right. Prayer is sometimes a good psychological support, and it can be a positive thing. Sometimes life can be really rough. I remember myself when I was a child. As a child, I would also pray to God. Was I Christian? I was never really Christian. It wasn't kind of not the way I was brought up, but. Still, you kind of do it naturally when life is really difficult, and you turn to some greater power to help you and support you. And I think many people do that in times of crisis, and that's okay. That's okay. We should not. To look down upon that is crazy, because we all go through really difficult patches sometimes when we need that kind of support. And so absolutely, and that can sometimes be helpful, and sometimes we need, because we are human beings and we have a kind of a broader identity that we need to support and all of these kind of things, and sometimes that comes out in that particular way. So what is the difference between prayer and determination? Well, again, I think the ideal kind of determination is not so much may the triple gem support me. For me, that is okay. Maybe the triple gem is just what that means really is that you want to use the triple gem in your life to live well. That's what it means. And to me, then it's better to make the determination, may I be kind. That's much better, because that is actually more direct and immediately understandable. If you say, may the triple gem support me, it may not be as obvious what it is that you have to do. But if you say, I make a determination to be kind, actually it's very obvious what you have to do. There's no doubt. You have to be kind. Kindness is a very actionable thing. May the triple gem support me is not very actionable immediately. So if you make a determination, I would suggest something like that is a better way of doing it. And it is less of a prayer, and it's more of a kind of practice instead. That is my suggestion.
Sorry, just to clarify.
Yeah, please.
What if when I say by the power of triple gem, as in like the qualities of the triple gem, I reflect on it, so it could basically, for my practice, I could remind myself of the qualities and for the practice. Then will that be good? Or?
Sure, that is very good. So reminding yourself of the qualities is great. And the standard way of doing that is the Itipiso chant. The Itipiso Nada? That's kind of the qualities of the Buddha. Itipiso Bhagava Arahang Samma Sambuddho. And then the qualities of the Dhamma, the qualities of the Sangha. I often give talks on these things during the retreats. I really enjoy that. So I go through every word, and can be very, very inspiring. So, but sometimes, take one of those words, of the Buddha. Take one of the words of the Dhamma. What do they mean? Or the Sangha, whatever. And then reflect on that. And then, make try to emulate that, because that's what it really is about. It's about emulating the Buddha. The Buddha often talks about his own life and his own practice and what he did. And of course, he did that to inspire us to emulate his own life in the same way. So all of these determinations are great, but use them in the most practical way possible to actually lead to good qualities. And the more practical it is, the more powerful it's going to be. Thank you.
Thank you, Ajahn.
Great.
Hi, Ajahn. Thank you for the talk. I was just curious about that Brahmin, because he was told by the deity that the other Brahmin who put the curse was a charlatan. Why was he still curious about head splitting?
I think the point may have been that the obvious meaning of head splitting is one thing, and then there is some other meaning of head splitting. And he was probably curious about the spiritual significance of that. Presumably that's kind of where it came from. Very often the Buddha does these kind of things. He says, for example, in one of the suttas in the connected discourses, he says there's some deity comes down to the Buddha. There's often this conversation between the deity and the Buddha, and some deity comes down and says, "Oh, you're Buddhist. You can't kill anything." And the Buddha says, "Actually, that's not quite right. There's one thing we are allowed to kill as Buddhists." You know what that is? Have you read that? You know that sutta? He says the one thing you can kill as Buddhist is anger. You can kill anger. And so it's kind of this idea of playing with words and playing with concepts and redefining things slightly is one of the things that the Buddha excels at. And so I think that this Brahmin was probably just wanted to know what is the alternative way of thinking about this. Yeah, what can it actually mean? They were kind of playful. I like that. Yeah, playfulness. I think playfulness is so important in life. Not to take things too seriously, but mess around, to joke, to say silly things, not to take oneself too seriously. You know, there's always a danger taking oneself too seriously. It kind of makes you very bit rigid and a bit stupid, maybe, if you're too serious. So, and I think that's what they were. Maybe that's what they were doing. I'm just guessing, really, but maybe. Yeah.
Thank you.
A simple question.
Yeah.
After hearing mentioned the word right view often,
Yeah.
as Buddhists, how should we view life and the world?
How you should view life and the world.
How should we view life?
Okay, good. No, I think that's a really important question, particularly these days when the world is doing so many funny things. Is it just me, or do people agree that the world is kind of going funny these days? It seems to me the world is going funny. And one of the things that you realize, and all of these things, the politics of the world and the news of the world, all of that is really grist for the mill if you use it in the right way. It helps you to practice the Dhamma by viewing it correctly. And so for me, when I see all the wars in the world, I think, I'm so happy I'm a Buddhist monk. Yeah, that's what I think. Yay, I'm a Buddhist monk. I escaped from all of that. Yeah, don't have to take part in those things. Wow, that is so lucky. And so one of the ways of thinking about all of that is to remind yourself of the nature of the world. The world is inherently impermanent. If we are shocked when you turn on the TV or you go to the internet site and you see the new war has just been started somewhere in the world, it looks like wars are getting started all the time these days. Ukraine, Middle East, Iran, whatever, then actually you shouldn't really be shocked. But the reason you are shocked is because you haven't taken on board properly, fully, the Buddha's teaching on impermanence, uncertainty, unreliability. This is the nature of the world, it's the nature of human beings that we go to war. We have all of these things inside of us, it's waiting to come out in bad ways. You have the Second World War, it kind of blocks our willingness to go to war for a while because we see all the suffering, and then you start forgetting it, and then you're willing to go to war again after a while. And so this is just a reminder of the nature of the world. And what it does, if you reflect it on the right way, it shows you that there is no refuge in that world. That world doesn't provide you with any security. That world doesn't provide you with any certainty of happiness or anything like that. You've got to find that security and refuge somewhere else. Where is that somewhere else? The Buddhist practice. So if you think about it in the right way and you observe the world in the right way, it drives you towards a spiritual path, makes you more sincere, more committed to all of these things. This is an aspect of right view, seeing the world in the right way. And so you see it like that, you become more committed to kindness, to generosity, to meditation, to wisdom, to coming on retreats, whatever it is, because you understand that is where the refuge is to be found. You have we were just reading out the standard formula for the doing of kamma today. It's one of those reflections about doing of kamma. And it says, kamma patti sadhana. Kamma patti sadhana, it means kamma. Your kamma is your refuge. So your refuge is how much good things you do. If you live really well, you have a really good refuge. And if you live badly, you have no refuge at all. So make the most out of this life. The final and the best and the highest kind of refuge in Buddhism is meditation. Because, I keep on knocking my nose into this one, is the meditation. Because in meditation you go inwards. You find the joy and the peace inside. And that joy and the peace inside cannot be disturbed by the world outside. That is a real refuge if you have access to that, and you can enter meditation at will because you know how meditation works. You have a real refuge in your life. And then when the world goes haywire, the world goes to the dogs. It is no longer meant for human beings, it goes to the dogs instead. Then you have somewhere else to go. Yeah, this is kind of the point of all this. This is the right view about the world. Understanding that this is what the Buddha warned against when he said on his deathbed, Vaya Dhamma Sankara Apamadena Sampadeta. Vaya Dhamma Sankara, all phenomena have the nature to end or to break up. For that reason, practice with diligence. Yeah, something to that effect, or practice heedfully, or however you want to think about it. Great. Over here, anywhere there.
Vandami Ajahn. My question is about your statement on the killing of anger as prescribed by the Lord Buddha.
Yeah.
So when it comes to experiencing like really deep and intense emotions of anger, I believe that we are not supposed to, act on that impulse and rather to take time, allowing that anger to cease and subside before making a sane decision.
Right.
Yeah. But what if sometimes the anger could be beneficial for us in my specific experience? I think someone was trying to scam like me of my resources, and I did feel some sort of anger, or rather maybe not anger, but like just an intuition leaning towards anger. It tells me that this person is not sincere and is being manipulative. But another side of me which says that, hey, we should be exercising compassion to all beings and we shouldn't be too quick to judge. And I decided to just ignore the so-called anger or intuition and go with just a compassionate path. And I often end up getting into sticky situations because of this that I would regret afterwards. So how do we then balance the need to tune into that side of intuition?
Okay, all right. Yeah, okay, thank you. Now, I think these are very important questions, because sometimes it seems like if we don't get angry, we allow people to get away with things and they can do with us as they like, and we become victims and they kind of but that is not the right way of thinking about this. Well, one of the problems of anger is that it biases your outlook, and you cannot actually make good decisions if you get angry. You don't understand what is really beneficial for you and for the other person, and so you actually end up making bad decisions if you're angry. So I understand why you get angry. Of course you get a bit upset if someone is trying to scam you. It's natural. Most people will get upset, so it's kind of fair enough, but it's not really helpful. And that's what you should remember, because it biases your thing. So instead you think, okay, someone is trying to kind of rip me off, so what do I do now? What is the right thing to do? Okay, so maybe I should somehow get the police involved, if that is possible. Very often it's impossible. If it's over the internet, it's no way. But maybe I should. Is that going to be good for the other person? Probably, because if they are scamming people, maybe they need to see the police a little bit. Maybe the police are going to sort them out. Maybe they need to go to jail for a while to get them on a better track. These things are not necessarily bad. Sometimes people need a bit of, correction to be able to kind of go the right way. So being forgiving and being kind does not always mean allowing it to just carry on. Being forgiving and kind can mean to report it to the police, can mean taking some kind of action which stops that person from doing it again in the future. And there's also the broader idea of kindness. It's not just kindness to that person, but kindness to everyone. If they're scamming you, they're scamming other people, everyone is going to suffer from this. So I think reporting it is fine, but you report it not from ill will. You take that action because you understand it's going to be for the greater good to do that. Then you're doing it in the right way. So this is take action. Don't be a doormat. Don't be passive. Buddhists should not be doormats. Sometimes we think that Buddhists should be doormats. Absolutely not. We should take action. We should take action coming from the right kind of understanding and compassion, rather than actually from ill will and these kind of biased qualities.
Thank you, Ajahn.
Okay, good. Yep. Over there, anywhere.
Nama budaya Ajahn. Okay, following for this lady question, I want to ask to take action when we think that the scammer is wrong view, right? It's a wrong action.
Yeah.
So okay, it's not about scammer now. It's about the career. Okay, about the career working,
Yeah.
the company.
Okay.
Okay, let's say Ajahn, I want to ask opinion.
Yeah.
Let's say I go to report to the labor about this all wrongdoing.
Yeah.
But for this point of view, should I think about my commitment or family commitment, or should I go to report to prevent for the next person to have a same case like fraud or this thing? Thank you.
So okay. Just to clarify what you're asking that you should report something within your company. Is that what you said? Something is bad in your company, and you
No. I mean because we are doing should I be go to report to the like the company about works to labor, or should we think more about about the family commitment, to think about the way that we feed families, and then should we stop and then discuss internal, accept or go to external parties to discuss the all related to more of compassion to the words that to all beings.
Not sure if I fully understand what you're saying, but so you are comparing on the one side looking after your family, and on the other side reporting something bad. Niwan, do you understand what she's saying?
I want to ask like this, something like when I go to report, and I need to care about the family first, or I go to report to care about the company, or this thing.
Reporting on another colleague
Yeah.
report to the higher management or to the police?
To the labor.
Okay. So you find somebody doing something wrong, and you would like to report to the, let's say, labor office or labor department, because the person deserves some kind of. But then you're considering whether
the family of that person,
his family will be
I see. Okay,
affected,
now I understand. Okay.
Or you saying report him because he's doing something wrong, or you have compassion for him because he's got his family to look after.
Right. Okay. Yeah, now I understand. Okay. Good. Yeah. Good question. Very good question. And I don't know if I have the answer, but I will say something anyway, so you can then decide what you want to think. So all of these things there isn't any right or wrong answer very often. There isn't one thing that is right and one thing that is wrong. So I would say it depends a lot on the circumstances. But very often, maybe there is another way of correcting that person. Maybe you can have a chat with this person who does wrong and see if you can maybe help them directly in a more informal way rather than reporting them to the police. Maybe you can have a chat with the people in the company, or maybe you can somehow kind of sort it out in a more basic way. Maybe you can give them say that, well, if you don't change, I will have to report it because it's bad for everyone around here. So, please stop, or I will report it, but I will give you this chance. Maybe give them 2 chances even, In Buddhism, sometimes we give 3 chances, and then see what happens. And in the end, maybe you have to do something. Maybe you do have to report it, because maybe it has the consequences of their actions are so bad for many people. And then whether it is bad for the children depends on what happens after they get reported to the police. Maybe it is not bad. Maybe it is good for the children if they have a parent who is doing dodgy things. Maybe that is also bad for the children to have that parent who is doing dodgy things. So I would say you just have to feel the overall situation. Look at the broader view. It has to be good for everyone in a certain way. Find alternative ways to sort it out if you can, and then kind of move forward. Always come from compassion for everyone involved, and then see what you can do. But I agree that children obviously are an important factor in that kind of situation. So good luck. Do you have such a problem? You don't have to answer if you don't want to answer. That's okay. Yeah. All right.
Ajahn,
I want to ask a question which may or may not, you may or may not answer, right? Actually, I just want to ask, what makes a good Dharma teacher?
What makes a good Dhamma teacher?
Yeah, because in our culture, normally we don't question the Sangha. Whatever they say, we tend to accept. And we go for so many Dhamma talks. Some got PhD in philosophy, Buddhist philosophy. Some just train in the hills or in the mountains. Some are highly intellectual. Some are from experience. How do we decide? Because sometimes we are confused. We go to this Dhamma talk, we listen, then next week we go to another Dhamma talk, we listen again. Sometimes it may not gel with us. You may find that there are differences here and there. On top of that, you got so many what they call sects in Buddhism. Okay, you got Theravada, Mahayana, Tibetan, Zen, and all those. So all this information is floating everywhere. How do we know we are actually moving in the right view,
very good question.
in the right path, and we are with the right teacher? Thank you.
So this is a very good question, because I have a lot of compassion for lay people. It's really hard to find the way. Even as a monk, when you're in the middle of all of this, it can be hard enough to kind of navigate all of these teachings and find your way through. And for lay people, much more difficult, because there, you have less direct contact with the teaching, less direct contact with the Sangha. Actually, it's very hard. And so I have a lot of compassion for you. And so I'm going to answer your question because of compassion. So the answer of what makes a good Dhamma teacher is someone who speaks according to the word of the Buddha. That is the most important thing here. And so this is one of the reasons why I like to do things like sutta retreats that focus on the suttas and the word of the Buddha. But to be able to find out who speaks according to the word of the Buddha, first of all, you need to know what is the word of the Buddha. That's kind of a prerequisite. Otherwise, you have no idea. And so I think from modern historical research, Bobby just said that I wrote a book with another monk called The Authenticity of the Early Buddhist Texts. And I'm going to brag. That book, Richard Gombrich, professor of Sanskrit at Oxford University for 30 years, he said it was the best book about the authenticity of Buddhist texts. He said that. And so I was very pleased when he said that. I know him a little bit. He's actually a very nice man. He's not really a Buddhist, but he's agreed with our approach to this question. And so the answer is that the authenticity of the texts that are most authentic and likely to be the word of the Buddha are those texts that are found in common between all the various traditions. Obviously, because they hark back to a common source, a common origin. And they are basically the long discourses, mid-length discourses, connected discourses, and numerical discourses. Those are the main ones. There's a few extra ones, like the ones I talked about today, the Parayanavagga, which comes on top of that. So that is these are the authentic Buddhist texts. So people who speak from those texts, in accordance with those texts, who spend a lot of time quoting from those texts, and doing it in the appropriate way, they are the best teachers, because they are giving you real Dhamma. They're giving you the content of the Buddha. It doesn't mean that other teachings are wrong, but what it means is that you are on much more uncertain ground when you hear other teachings, like Abhidhamma. I translate Abhidhamma as philosophy, because I think basically it's philosophy. And you're on much more uncertain ground. You don't really know as fully whether you're getting the authentic thing, and if it is authentic, whether it is as practical and pragmatic as the teaching of the Buddha. So this is what I would go by. This is number one criterion for what makes a good teacher. There's actually many, many qualities. Another quality is the quality of the person. Do they come across as someone who has the qualities of the Dhamma? You judge a teacher, you look at them. Do they practice in a way that has integrity, that actually is in accordance with those teachings? So the teacher should ideally have those qualities themselves, because the more they have of those qualities, the more likely they are to also understand what is in the suttas, because there's a matching there, yeah? And if they have very, very good qualities, and sometimes you can feel that certain people have really, really good qualities, and then you can, maybe they are enlightened, maybe they have really deep insight. I know a few people in the world that I consider, in that category, and so I listen very carefully to what they have to say. So look at the conduct of the people. Believe your eyes. If the conduct is bad, it is bad. Yeah, it is not. You don't have to listen to other people say, no, the action around they just behave badly. Don't believe that. Yeah? Trust your eyes. Trust what you see. And if you see dodgy behavior, there's grounds for being doubtful. So that is an important part of it. Another basis for being a good teacher is kind of your ability to articulate things. Obviously, is important. Some people are just better at articulating the Dhamma than others. And if you teach the Dhamma well, you teach it gradually. There is a sequence, there is a structure to a talk. It begins with the more basic things and ends up with the more profound things. The Buddha does this all the time. Not all teachers do that. Yeah, it's actually less common. So that is also an important quality. So all of these things coming together make for a good Dhamma teacher. So there's probably much more, but my mind is a bit blurry about teaching too much recently. There's many more things, but it gives you a kind of a foundation to think of that. Yeah. Please.
Hi, good evening, Ajahn. I just wish to share that this is the first time my husband and I are attending a sutta, right? And we find this sutta very enlightening because it then gives us an avenue for us to really see to answer the Mrs. Brother's question. Yeah, as you go around, then you reflect back. Okay, we observe this, so that's how we come to the sutta class to ask clarification from Ajahn. So I will think that everyone here in this room, you have not attended the sutta, and Ajahn Brahmali is coming next year, then you should grab all the opportunity, right? And your families and all your friends and colleagues to attend the sutta. Thank you very much.
Yeah, wow. That is very good. Yeah, PR, free marketing.
Ajahn Brahmali comes to BGF for 10 years now. But I only got to know about it like a few weeks ago. You see, so I think everyone here, you should take advantage of it, especially young people. Young people, you should ask a lot of questions. Because when you ask a lot of questions, then you internalize, then you think about it. And then when you know, it remains in your mind. That's how you train your mind to actually think and absorb the knowledge that Ajahn Brahmali has kindly shared with us in this retreat. I would really encourage you all to sign up right now.
This is my most enthusiastic student on this retreat. She's super enthusiastic.
Free promotion.
Free promotion, free marketing, everything. So thank you. That's very kind of you to promote it in that way. That's really good. Actually, I wanted to say a couple of more things about the question you asked, because one of the things you asked in there was that about asking questions, right? And hasn't been decided yet. Still kind of up for probably around this time, roughly around this time. Not entirely sure. So it is very important to ask questions, and it's a shame that sometimes in Buddhist culture the teacher is just put there, they talk, and there's no questions possible. And I think that's a bad idea. And I think I really encourage people to ask questions. I encourage a bit back and forth, because when there is back and forth, actually you learn much more from that than if just one person is speaking. One person speaking, you fall asleep after a while. Yeah, you kind of have enough. You don't want to hear anymore the same voice. Yeah, sleep-inducing. Sometimes you hear people snoring at the back, and that's okay. So please ask questions. In fact, when you read the way the Buddha talked about this, he says that you should ask questions. He talks about Dhamma Sakkacha. Dhamma Sakkacha means discussion on the Dhamma. Yeah, so you should actually. So discussion is really, really good. And so people in Malaysia are not too bad. People often ask questions, not always, but sometimes. But you can do better. You can ask even more questions. So I fully agree with you on that particular point. Yeah. So please, yeah.
Hi, Ajahn. Thank you very much for all the lessons you have given us so far.
Yeah.
My question relates to, and I really like your point that good teachers refer back to the sutta and keep it as close as possible to the sutta because they are the word of the Buddha.
Yeah.
My question is, how do you read the sutta for things that happen after the time of the Buddha? So, for example, if you think about Christianity, for example, Christianity arose after the Buddha.
Yeah.
And a lot of the central principles around love, compassion, taking care of your parents, being upright, being ethical, and so on, many of those principles are the same. But obviously the central practice, the central right view is absolutely different between Christianity and Buddhism.
Yeah.
So how do you use the sutta to help understand something that came way beyond, in chronologically beyond?
Yeah. Okay. So basically, you just have to have a deep understanding of the Dhamma, and once you have a deep understanding of the Dhamma, then all other teachings kind of are contrasted with that, and you will be able to tell what is good and what is bad with those other teachings. Just like you are saying now, right? You can point out the things in Christianity, morality, having love your neighbor as thyself, or whatever it is. I'm bad with Christianity, but whatever it is, all of those things you can understand them because you have an understanding of the Dhamma. So it's really about understanding what the Dhamma is saying, and then straight away you can tell what part of Christianity is good and what maybe not fit with the Buddhist teaching. You can kind of judge very quickly. So I think that's really all there's to it. Actually, I don't think there's much more. One of the things that the Buddha says about himself is that he knows all doctrines straight away. He knows because he knows he can compare it to his own breakthrough and to his own insight, and that straight away it will kind of stand out what matches and what does not, and you will understand it from that perspective. Is that what you asked, or I'm not even sure if I fully understand? Yeah. Okay. Good. Okay. Great.
Hi,
Please.
Ajahn.
Hi.
It was emphasized on right view just now, and I think my understanding, little understanding, is that one of the right view that Buddhists should hold is that there is rebirth.
Yeah.
How would you convince people that there is rebirth and that is the right view?
Yeah.
And how to have this view of rebirth is actually a not so right view.
Yeah. How I would convince people? Well, there is a lot of evidence for the idea of rebirth, right? There's a lot of things going on in the world that seem to match the idea of rebirth. All kind of phenomena like children remembering past lives, like out-of-body experiences, and all of these kind of things. Consciousness being able to exist apart from the body. There's lots of kind of things that kind of point in that direction. And all of that is possible evidence for rebirth. It's not absolute, it's not the final say, but it's possible. But there is one evidence for rebirth that really stands out. There's one evidence that is so powerful that I would say it should persuade everyone in this room straight away that there must be rebirth. This is exciting, right? Now, this is really exciting. What is that piece of evidence? It is that the Buddha said there is rebirth. Why? We are Buddhists. You have faith in the Buddha's awakening. The part of the Buddha's awakening is the insight into rebirth. This is part of what he understood. In fact, I would go so far as to say that that very insight into rebirth is actually what made the Buddha's awakening possible. At the time of his awakening, I was going to say the night, but I think it's probably spanned out more than that. He first of all enters samadhi, then he recalls his past lives, and that to me is actually the understanding of dukkha, of suffering. And that understanding of suffering is required for you to be able to make the breakthrough to the Four Noble Truths, because that is all based around suffering. The insight that gives up the illusion of the self and all of these kind of things is so profound that you need some very powerful understanding before you go there. And that powerful understanding is the understanding of rebirth. And so it is through and through part of the Buddha Suttas There's Four Noble Truths. Each one of the Four Noble Truths concerns with rebirth. Dependent origination is concerned with rebirth. Some people use it in different ways, but the main line, obvious understanding, is that it concerns rebirth. Rebirth is so much part. It's the purpose of the end of the spiritual path. The people say rebirth has been ended. That's all they say. Rebirth has been ended. That's it. That's kind of what is the purpose of it. And so if you have faith in the Buddha as a spiritual master, a special spiritual giant and genius, and I think there's every reason to think that the Buddha was an extraordinary spiritual giant, genius, master, whatever you want to call it, then how can you reject what he's saying? He said there is rebirth. If you go to school and your school teacher says that 1 + 1 is 2, or your school teacher says that during the Second World War, Malaysia was invaded by the Japanese. It was, wasn't it? The Japanese came this way. So do you deny that, or do you say, thank you, teacher, for teaching me history? Usually you accept it, right? Because why would the teacher lie to you? This is history, this is what happened, and we all learned this in school, and it seems fair enough. And so we accept it. But that teacher who teaches you 1 + 1 is 2, or who teaches you that Malaysia was invaded by the Japanese during the Second World War, that teacher might be wrong, because information is not always certain. Maybe 1 + 1 is not 2. Apparently there are mathematical systems that you can create where 1 + 1 is not 2. So they might be wrong. But the Buddha is far more interesting, far more powerful teacher than that teacher in primary school. If you're going to believe that teacher in primary school, you should believe the Buddha 1,000 times more, because this is a person with amazing integrity, someone who says specifically, I only teach what I have awakened to, what I say and what I do are always consonant to each other. So if we're going to believe the other teachers, we should believe the Buddha much more. The only reason why it is hard to believe the Buddha is because the Buddha is separated from us in time and space by such a long period. So when you think about the Buddha, it's almost like it's a slightly mythological person. 2,500 years ago, different culture, all of these kind of things. But that is just another illusion. The Buddha is a real human being. The fact that he lived 2,500 years ago doesn't make him any more mythological than my primary teacher or your primary school teacher, just as real as them. He gave these teachings. So once you accept that the Buddha has some kind of profound insight into reality, you are forced to take rebirth seriously. Okay, I don't know there is rebirth. I'm not going to go around saying it's the absolute truth. But if the Buddha said, I'm going to take it very, very seriously. One of the conceits of the modern world, and this is kind of part of the cognitive biases we have as human beings. We often talk about various cognitive biases, like confirmation bias is a kind of famous one. But there is also a bias towards the present. We take present things as more important, more significant than things in the past. We are more evolved. Our society is the best one. We are the pinnacle of civilization after 2,500 years. 2,500 years ago, they didn't have anything. What did they know 2,500 years ago? So there's a bias towards seeing the present as more evolved and more in all areas of life, basically. And so we assume that if in the present there is no idea of rebirth, then that present view must be more correct than the one 2,500 years ago. But present society is just as biased as any other society. In 100 years' time, they're going to look at many things very differently. It's just that in the present, we can't see those biases, but we can see the biases of the past. And so we tend to prefer the present. But I would say that one of the biases of the present is the rejection of rebirth. That is actually the bias of the present society, where we kind of misunderstand what really is going on and what is happening. And so so to me, that is the most powerful answer to the question, what is the evidence? The evidence is that the Buddha said so. That to me is kind of the final answer on that question. Ultimately, it is about really realizing these things yourself. But in the meantime, that is the most important one. Are you happy with that, or do you not quite? Or
being a Buddhist, that is of course a lesser barrier for me to to take in the idea of rebirth. But either debating or discussing with another person of a different spiritual belief and they believe of a different gospel truth. And then they realize that's because that is the God's word. So it's a mirror. It doesn't advance anybody's argument further.
So the answer is then what you should do in that situation. You should say, I believe there is rebirth. I don't know it, but I believe there is rebirth. I'm happy to be proved wrong if there's wrong here, but let's see what happens. So keep, as long as you don't know, it's always good to keep an open mind. Something like that.
Thank you, Ajahn.
Ajahn, another question from me. It's just how you talk about belief and asking questions. So now I'm going to ask questions.
Okay, good.
So, so this is actually more towards monks Vinaya. Because as a layperson, like what brother mentioned just now, our culture, our Asian culture, we don't really question. And sometimes, maybe I just give you an example. I went to a monastery in Thailand.
Okay.
A very, very good forest monastery. I won't name drop, but and I see the monks there. And then I saw, of course, I'm going to ask you later whether this is allowable or not. Like they were driving a buggy. So in my understanding, I thought monks cannot drive. You can correct me if I'm wrong. Then I was asking my another Dharma friend whether I saw this and it basically shaken my faith a bit. And then my friend told me that why should you care about others people practice? Is it because your ego, or you ask because you genuinely want to know, or is it because your ego? And then it strikes as something like I'm being judged of asking this question. But during that time, if you go somewhere, especially to a place that you think is really good, it's a very well-renowned forest monastery, and you see something that, whoa, that's surprising, I didn't know that. So it will shake my faith. You can argue that I'm a doubtful person, but I think I have the right to question that. So I want to know your opinion about this.
Absolutely, you have the right to question that, and I think you should. If you have doubts, you should, and if they should have a good answer. So if you came to our monastery in Perth, have you been to our monastery in Perth? No. Okay.
Unfortunately,
so if you come, you probably see many things that you thought, wow, this is not Vinaya. This is really dodgy. What's going on there? And then you can come to me and I will give you some answers on why we're doing it in a particular way. But your faith might be fundamentally shaken to the core, when you saw all those things there. But it's important to remember the core things and the things that are really significant, the things that are not so significant. And so when you comes to the practice of the Vinaya, some of the rules are that there's a large variety of rules. And some of them are very minor rules. And the Buddha says that, for example, he says things like, these rules, they only break them if you don't keep them out of disrespect. If you decide, I'm not going to keep this rule because of disrespect, then it's bad. So if I'm disrespectful to the rule, I said, I don't care about that rule, I don't give a whatever about that rule, then you break the rule. But if you have a good reason to break that rule, actually it's not a problem. It's only if you don't keep it out of disrespect that it is an issue. These are called the Seikya rules, the minor rules in the Vinaya. That's kind of how they're phrased. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I understand, but may I know, does the Vinaya has major and minor rules?
The Vinaya has all kinds of rules, right? There are Parajika rules which make you expelled as a monk. There are other serious rules called Sanghadisesa rules. There are rules that are Pachitya rules, which are just to be confessed. And then there's Seikya rules, which are the kind of rules I'm talking about now. There's a whole variety of rules. And so you need to understand the difference between all of these rules. This is kind of one of the things. And so then you will behave differently according to the situation. And this is kind of what is going on. So it's quite a complicated thing. And so what you need to know, you need to understand the difference between these rules and that kind of thing to really know what's going on there.
So as a layperson, if let's say I see something that's really like shaken me, it's okay to question. Is that what you're saying?
You should question. You should question, and they should give you a good answer. Yeah, because when you get a good answer, then either your faith will be restored, or if it is really dodgy, then maybe your faith shouldn't be restored in the first place because it's too dodgy. Yeah, there are many dodgy things that should not be supported, and then it's okay. But it's not so much that your faith should be shaken. It is more that the faith in that particular monk should be shaken. It doesn't mean that the Dhamma overall is dodgy just because certain monks are dodgy. And even in forest monasteries, it's quite common that maybe the senior monks or certain monks will be really good practitioners, but in most monasteries there will be monks or nuns who are not so good practitioners and who may do dodgy things. That's just why there's always a decline in the Dhamma. So don't judge the whole of Buddhism by the conduct of individuals. If you do, it's going to be very problematic. As long as there are some inspiring teachers in the world, some inspiring monks and nuns, that is sufficient to prove that the Dhamma works. That is the important thing. So don't lose your confidence too quickly. That's what I say. Be careful with that one. But absolutely, you have the right to ask, and you should ask. Good on you for asking. And if those monks or whoever says that it's bad to ask, but actually it's their fault for saying that.
Sorry, Ajahn, just out of curiosity. So then the question will be, can a monk drive a buggy?
Can a monk drive a buggy? I would say we don't normally drive. There is no specific rule actually against driving. There is a specific rule against being passenger in animal-drawn vehicles. That's kind of the main rule. But even driving a vehicle, actually, there's no specific rule against that. Surprisingly. So some monks even drive in the city. I have heard about some really good monks who drive in the city. In our monastery in Perth, the monks will actually drive on the property itself, but not outside the property. So drive on the property. So that's kind of how it is. So there is no specific rule against that one actually. So
Thanks for the clarity, Ajahn.
Right.
Sadhu.
Okay, very good.
Hi, Ajahn. So despite knowing the Dhamma, I still find it difficult to overcome my fear towards certain people, for example, my boss.
Okay.
So, what can I do?
Overcoming your fear of your boss. What can you do to overcome the fear of the boss? Get another job, maybe? That's one possibility.
Maybe not my boss, like certain people in life as well. So I couldn't, it's like you're stuck with them. So
right. Okay. So the thing about fear, and this is kind of one point that sometimes people like Ajahn Brahm make, fear is always about looking at the future in a fault-finding way, seeing danger in the future. That's kind of what fear comes from, that something will happen to you, they will treat you badly, and then you have to suffer the consequence of that bad treatment or whatever. That's what fear is about. If you step into the road without looking, you have fear of being hit by a car because it's going to be painful. So one way of getting around that is to remember that your future is mostly created by how you live your life. If you live your life well, and if you are kind and a good and a caring person, and then you're going to have a good future. In the long term, it's going to be a good future. If you have some short-term dukkha on the way, that's to be expected anyway, but your long-term future will be a good one. That's a beautiful way of thinking about life. And this is how you can deal with all kinds of problems, basically. You know that you're heading in a good direction, and so you can deal with the issues right here and now. So what is the worst thing that your boss could do to you, other people? The worst thing is they could kill you. That's kind of the worst thing, right? That's unlikely to happen. Even your boss isn't that bad, I'm sure. But let's say they kill you. Okay, so you die. Then you get reborn. You have a good person, good qualities, you get reborn, you carry on with your practice on the other side. If you can deal with death, you can deal with any lesser suffering as well. Look at the worst possible scenario. That worst possible scenario will put everything else in context. You can reduce your fear. That's one way of doing it.
Thank you, Ajahn.
Okay, good luck. All right. one of those interesting things, coming back to the idea of rebirth again, because let's just answer that question a little bit more. And because one of the things that you often hear is that is the cultural baggage of ancient India, because they believed in rebirth, and so the Buddha took it on board as part of the cultural baggage. However, the Buddha is said to have realized these things. So for the Buddha, it was not cultural baggage; it was an insight into reality. However, I would say that modern people who say there is no rebirth, that I would call cultural baggage. Because it's cultural baggage from the modern world. So we are looking at the cultural baggage in the wrong place. It's in the modern world that we have cultural baggage. The Buddha, it was not cultural baggage, it was insight. Anyway. You want to say something more? Okay, yeah.
Ajahn, I just wanted to promote your retreat.
Yeah.
You see, when I came to this sutta, I discovered a lot of things. So I see a lot of young people here.
Yeah.
So I just want to share that before you get married, when you're starting dating, it's best that you and your girlfriend or boyfriend come and attend the sutta class, because the sutta class actually teach you many qualities as your interrelationship as husband and wife, or as boyfriend and girlfriend, so that when you both learn the same thing, then you are aligned, then you speak the same language, then you think the same. The second thing is the target market, right? Okay. Then when you attend the sutta class, this is no joke one really. Then you're going to have babies, right? So you must be a good Dharma parent, because you must learn how to bring up the child the right way, the right view, the right thinking, the right things, so that we all grow up well, healthy, and happy. Correct, no, Ajahn?
Good, yeah, great. This is amazing. Yeah.
And then Ajahn says that,
Bobby, Bobby, are you here?
in the sutta class.
Where's Bobby? You have to hire this lady as a marketing master. Yeah.
Ajahn taught us about death contemplation. You see, I think this is very profound, because we don't know when we're going to die, right? He said about, you must contemplate death in one breath, right? And then there are many instances. So he teaches us how to do a right meditation. When we meditate, we always think it's breath meditation, or metta meditation, but it's actually more than that. So it builds up your good qualities, and then you bring down your not so good qualities. So I think that when you go for this sutta class, then you actually look at yourself, your relationship with your parents, your relationship with your boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife. And these things are very important in your life, because we are born in this world, so we can't do anything else. So we just have to live it the right way. Correct, Ajahn? Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Amazing.
Please buy this book. Please buy this book. Sorry. As I was reading this book, then it answers a lot of your questions about causes and conditions. It actually tells you about a lot of things that you do is about causes and conditions, but Ajahn explains it very well. Then you start to realize and deja vu about a lot of things that comes into our path, like how you end up being here, like how you end up getting that career, or how you're having problem with your boss, and how you end up as husband and wife, things like that. It helps. Thank you very much, and good night.
Thank you. That's amazing.
Yeah. That's a very good conclusion to the talk, Ajahn.
Very good conclusion to things. Yeah. Maybe we better stop there. So a few other people wanted to ask questions. It's getting late, and we have another day tomorrow. So anyway, so very nice to be here in KL again and to meet you. So marvelous. I'm very glad that people are inspired by the Dhamma. That's always wonderful. So let's end off the day as we usually do, by paying respect to the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. Do the Arahant Samma Sambuddha together.
Arahant Samma Sambuddha Bhagava Buddham Bhagavatam Abhivademi. สุปฏิปันโนภะคะวะโตสา